Probably the strongest statement that we find anywhere in the Scriptures that deals directly with the question of predestination is found in the 9th chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans. In that particular text, he deals with the election of Jacob rather than Esau. And not only does this text speak heavily to the matter of predestination in general, but it also has significance for the controversial question of whether or not predestination is double. So let's take some time in this session to look at the 9th chapter of Romans and give attention to what the apostle says in it. I will begin in verse 9 of chapter 9. For this is a word of promise. At this time I will come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but there was Rebekah also, when she had conceived twins by one man, our father Isaac. For though the twins were not yet born, and had not done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose, according to his choice, might stand, not because of works, but because of him who calls, it was said to her, the older will serve the younger, just as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Now here, when Paul seeks to illustrate his understanding of divine election, he uses, for purposes of illustration, an example of two men. And I think that it's significant that the two that he chooses are brothers. And not only are they brothers, but they are twin brothers. That is, they have the same family, the same background, the same geographical location. Everything that could possibly be the same is the same. They are, in fact, womb mates. Thank you. I get a little punchy after we study predestination for this long. And in his consideration of these two men, he labors the point that one is preferred over the other before either is born. Now that statement, before they were born, raises the question of God's foreknowledge. The most popular view of predestination that rejects the Augustinian view is that view we call the foreknowledge view of election, which basic thesis is this, that predestination simply means that God from all eternity looks down through time and knows in advance what people will do, and on the basis of that foreknowledge then chooses them. Now we notice that chapter 9 of Romans speaks very sharply to this question. We read that, for though the twins were not yet born and had not done anything good or bad. Let's just look at that phrase. Paul does not say here that for God had not known what they were going to do, or that he had known what they were going to do. He simply declares that the twins hadn't been born yet, and they hadn't done anything. So all the text explicitly teaches is that God's choice of Jacob over Esau was made before they were born. Now the foreknowledge view would agree that God's predestinating choice is done at the foundation of the earth before anybody's born. Everybody agrees that predestination is accomplished in the mind of God before people are born. But the foreknowledge view says that the choice is made before people are born, but in light of what God knows they will do after they are born. Now we have silence in this passage with respect to that question specifically. But if ever in biblical content there was an awkward silence, here it is. What I'm getting at is this, that if the apostle had any desire to make clear that the electing, predestinating actions of God are done with a view to the future actions of man, this would have been the place to say it. And in other words, if the biblical view is what the foreknowledge view seeks to hold, namely that God always chooses in light of his knowledge of future decisions, first of all, why doesn't the Bible ever say that? It never says it. And if it ever had the opportunity to say it, here it is. But not only is it not said here, but Paul takes the time to say that though the choice was made before they were born, before they had done any good or evil. We have to ask the question, why does he include that? If his purpose was to communicate a foreknowledge view of election, the addition of these words would certainly confuse the people of God, wouldn't it? But let's go on further. Though the twins were not yet born, had not done anything good or bad. Now what's Paul's concern here? In order that God's purpose, according to his choice, might stand. The emphasis, again, in the passage is on God's purpose, and that what Paul is saying is that the reason why the decision is made before they're born, before they've done anything good or evil, is so that it's God's purpose who will stand. Do you see that the flavor of this passage is totally opposed to the concept of a foreknowledge view of predestination? Do you see that? I mean, what other reason could we give for the apostles emphasizing this fact that they had not done any good or evil? Not even had they not done it in space and time, but by implication, even in the mind of God. That is, from God's perspective, there is no good or evil that is taken into consideration here. Because the conclusion is, the reason why he states that, the reason that the apostle gives for having said it this way, is that the purpose of God might stand, according to his choice. Not because of works, but because of him who calls. The foreknowledge view says that God looks down into the future and he sees that some people will make the correct choice and others will make the incorrect choice. And what the foreknowledge view suffers from is that election in that view is based upon a good work. Believing this is the work of God, to believe in the one whom he has sent. The supreme good work is to place one's trust in Jesus Christ, in one sense of considering the biblical concept of the good work. But Paul is saying here that it is clearly not because of human works, but because of him who calls. The Arminian view, and its various styles and shapes and forms, bottom line, makes the final decision for our salvation rest upon a human choice, not upon a divine action. And I think Paul is annihilating that position here as strongly as he could possibly do it by emphasizing the fact that it is not because of works, but because of the one who calls. That the accent and the credit for your redemption is to be given to God. To God alone is the glory.